it's just like when you're trying to figure out if you're pregnant or not, you go online and you like search all the things. You're like breast tenderness and I haven't skipped my period yet, but I think I am feeling nauseous. And you just start going through the list. You're like, am I pregnant or am I not? Am I imagining this? Am I not? And some of that will hold true for trying to figure out if you're in labor. But I promise once things are moving, there will be a point where you're like, I am in labor. There is no turning back. I can't believe I was curious about whatever.
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started.
This episode is going to be all about how you know that labor is coming, which of course we cannot know unless there is some contractions happening or your bag of waters has broken, something like that. Following a pattern where things are getting longer, stronger, closer together. And that is how we know that labor is on its way. However, there are some of those like, not so obvious signs that can tell us that, yes, maybe it actually is happening. So here's some of the most common indicators that moms see when they are coming up to labor. And this is that some moms see, because I will say this, and then you will be expecting it. And of course, you will be the one that it doesn't happen to. So these are just like good information to have in the back of your mind to wonder if things are going to actually be happening here. But one of the first ones, I don't know if it's one of the first ones actually, I'd say one of the first ones would probably be more of like the nesting. And that's like a real thing where all of a sudden you start like scrubbing your house or you're noticing that things are out of place. You just start like organizing and building your little nest, building your home, getting ready for this little baby or these little babies to come home. So that can kind of be one of those first signs as things kind of get moving along and you're wondering like, wait, was that a contraction or I'm feeling this way? Am I going to have a contraction? One of the things that can happen is loose bowels. So very commonly, and you can even kind of have this almost like flu-like feeling where you're like, am I getting sick? Am I not getting sick? Like, why do I feel off? And then I have some loose bowels or diarrhea, which can be really, really common in the beginning. And it's just your body's way of clearing out. And I think too, kind of getting your attention to say, hey, looks like things are moving a little bit here. Something is different. Pay attention. So that can be a really common one. Your body is so smart and it does. It clears all of that stuff out, or it tries to make as much room as possible so that this baby has room to come down and out and in the wonderful way that this baby needs to be birthed. The other one is lower back pain. So it can start with like the cramping feeling, and it can be a little tricky because moms can have this prodromal labor and it can be like weeks of it. It can be sporadic, off and on, but oftentimes it like we start having this like low back pain. We're like, wait, like does my back just hurt, or am I cramping, or is that a contraction, but I'm feeling it in my back? So lower back pain or some of that discomfort can kind of be it. And if you're trying to see like, is this the start of labor, or, am I, paying attention to like how you're feeling too? Are you finding yourself a little bit more fatigued or tired? Pay attention to your hunger cues. Are you finding yourself more thirsty? All of that kind of stuff can play into it. And Some of that, like, have I been walking around all day or getting some time on the birth ball? So even when you're like watching TV at the end of the night, or if you're working at your desk and you can be on an exercise ball, then that can kind of like help smooth things out and help you decide like, yeah, no, actually that's like a new sensation. That's not my normal kind of discomfort that you might have in your back because you're carrying this, big baby in front of you at all times. So that can totally be something. Another one is the losing of your mucus plug. So this mucus plug, this pesky mucus plug, it can be kind of tricky because you can lose your mucus plug weeks before you have your baby. And in fact, you can regrow it and lose it again if you would like. Or you can lose it at the very beginning of, or like even just a couple days before labor. So you can lose it, but nothing's happening. You can lose it at the very beginning of labor, like those first contractions, and it starts to go, or you can lose it during labor, or you might never even see it. Like you will lose it at some point, but you just may never notice it. So it's kind of one of those, that's why I say the pesky mucus plug. It's kind of one of those tricky ones where you're like, I'm not totally sure if this is telling me that anything is happening or not. I will tell you for myself, with my first, I lost my mucus plug and I started having contractions just really soon afterwards. So for me, like that was something that was happening, but this was also my first birth and I couldn't tell that I was having contractions. We hadn't taken anything other than the hospital birth courses. So when I called in, they were like, well, okay, we'll start timing your contractions. And mind you, I thought I possibly had broken my water and I was having a little bit of trickle of water. So that's probably more so why they were telling me to time my contractions, but I wasn't feeling them. So I would have to like sit. And when I was sitting, they were coming every 10 minutes apart. And I could only tell because my stomach was getting like harder and I would push on it and be like, oh, that's harder. I'm going to mark that on my little piece of paper. But even with that, I still had to have, I didn't have to have, but I ended up having Pitocin to get things moving along, and it was a whole thing. So just know that your mucus plug, as fun as it is, and it might be part of something that is like happening really soon, it also could be absolutely nothing and drive you nuts. So just know that it is something that tells you that your cervix is dilating, because what it does, the mucus plug is what it does what it sounds like. It plugs that area. So you've got your cervix and it just kind of sits in there to kind of keep it sealed off tight so you can't get any like infection and stuff in there. It's really good. It's a good thing to have. And so when it starts releasing, it's because your cervix is dilating. And so that is a positive thing. It's also why it can come out blood tinged. It's totally normal for it looks like mucus and then it can be a little blood tinged. And that's because as your cervix dilates, little capillaries burst. And so you have a little bit of that blood in there. And so totally normal. Now, if you have like drippy blood or like actual blood, then that is an issue and you need to call your provider and head into the hospital. But if it is blood tinged, that is very normal. So there you have it. That is your mucus plug. It's so funny because it's just one of those things that I feel like I can't even tell you how many pictures of mucus plugs I have gotten over the years, and I love it every time. I'm never upset by a mucus plug picture. But the question always is this my mucus plug? Which 9 times out of 10, yep, that's your mucus plug. And 2, when is labor going to begin? To which I can never answer properly. So it's like, well, just keep track of how you're feeling for that day. Walk around, see if you're noticing anything different. But chances are it is probably nothing. And most of the time, even with mamas who have sent me their mucus plug pictures, it really is not labor time yet. It just means that your body is doing all the things to get ready to go. Another sign of labor beginning is your water breaking. Now, most labors do not start with a gush of water and then contractions right away. However, your water can break prior to you being in labor. It can break at the onset of labor, so right as labor begins, or it can break later down the line, or your baby can be born in caul or in the bag of waters and it could never break. So that's an option too. But if it does break, it does mean that labor needs to get going. So whether or not you have contractions, provided it's clear and odorless, you are good to stay at home and get things moving. So some things that you can do to get your labor going if the contractions don't immediately start or very shortly after, would be to take some walks. And I always say outside or go to Target or Costco, wherever you guys like to shop. I like having a cart to push around, which is why I say that. But go with somebody because if contractions begin, you don't want to be driving yourself around town. Go with somebody or make sure you're in a safe place and go for a walk and kind of see if you can get some of that going on. So we say, walk, maybe get something to eat, some kind of like high protein, maybe some fruit or something. See if you can make sure that you get baby moving and all that kind of stuff. You can shower, go or take a bath. Like I love to take a nice relaxing bath, especially when I think things are, going to be happening. Obviously, there are going to be different points of view on that. So if you've talked with your provider and they do not want you taking a bath, you're worried about your water at all, like the bath water not being a safe place for your belly or anything like that, then don't do it. But you can always take a shower. Shower is good to go. And that hot water, it can just be so relaxing. So again, clear, odorless, then you can do a couple of things to get things moving. This is also not the time to have intercourse to try and get things moving. You don't want, once the bag of water is broken, we don't want to push good bacteria in the vagina into an area where it does not belong or put other things in there that can cause other issues. Same with like feeling around and digging around yourself. Try and keep stuff out of that area. No tampons inserted or anything like that. So that area stays nice and clean. Nothing gets inserted at that point, but you can do the walking, you can do a shower, you can eat food, you can do nipple stimulation, you can use some clary sage oil and acupressure points. All of that kind of stuff can help get things moving once that bag of waters is broken. Now, if it breaks and it's prior to your 36th week or you're at all concerned at all, you're not feeling movement, there's any concern at all, then obviously head in. But a lot of times we say, clear and odorless and everything is good to go. You just keep track of when it broke, how much was there, and if it's clear and odorless. And then you call your provider and you just say, hey, our water broke at this time. There was this much, we're going to do some things and see if we can get things moving. And if not, we'll give you a call back. But we just wanted to let you know. That is the best way, in my opinion, unless you want to go into your birth place right away, to communicate with your provider to let them know you're aware that your water broke. You're going to be working to get things going. You're not coming in right now, but you will keep them apprised of what is going on. Rather than, my water broke, should I come in? The answer will always be yes. The answer will always be yes. Yes, please come in. Let us check you. Well, if your water's broken and you did want to labor at home, even if it is safe to labor at home, it is likely they're not going to let you leave now. Now, some will, most won't. So definitely a conversation to have with your provider ahead of time and just ask, if my water breaks before contractions begin, I would like to stay at home if that is what you would like to do. So how can we communicate to make sure that things are okay, and how long before I have to come in, or are you concerned before my water's broken, or signs that I need to keep track of or whatever. So obviously if you're at home, your water's broken and you're moving around and you're trying to get things going and you have a fever or the chills or, have it like you're like something like you're getting an infection of any kind or anything like that, then you head in. But otherwise you really are good to go for quite some time. It's just a matter of making sure that you and your provider are on the same page for that. Oftentimes they'll say, within 18 to 24 hours, we want that baby born once the bag of waters is broken. So that's just, again, time to communicate with your provider. Contractions are obviously a sign of labor. However, you can be one of those lucky moms that has that prodromal labor, and that's where we see contractions. They can become longer, stronger, closer together, but then they fizzle out, or they can be super sporadic and then like stop. I've had prodromal labor. It could have been with all three. I don't know. But then they started me on Pitocin. But with my last two, for sure, I had prodromal labor. And I had it for a couple days with my second, where I would, especially at night, they were coming like every 15 minutes. And so I wasn't sleeping. And I did that for 2 or 3 nights. I wasn't sleeping. I was exhausted. And then things finally like picked up on like the 3rd or 4th day, something like that. And with my last baby, I had an entire week of prodromal labor, which I'm over here feeling like it's so long and it's exhausting. And every minute of it is. There are women that do this for weeks. My sister was one of them. So it can be a little intense, but it was just like, yeah, they'd get, and I think with my third, it wasn't always longer, stronger, closer together. They were just like consistently ish. I'd have contractions all day, and then they would like fizzle out at night. And then I'd get a couple, so I wouldn't sleep great, but then they'd really come back during the day. And so anyways, we say it is likely a position thing. Even with my last, I did a bunch of stuff though, and it just wasn't working or doing what it was supposed to do. If you have an opportunity to kind of work on some positioning while you've got that prodromal labor going on, we say spinning baby, side lying release, things like that. Uh, that's the kind of stuff, rebozo work. That's the kind of stuff that I would have you guys do. But if that positioning isn't working, you just find a way to be as comfortable as possible. And I would say if you can, get into some water, whether you have a birth pool or you have access to a pool, not with your waters broken. This is just if you're having contractions and waters are intact, then that's something that you can do to kind of alleviate it. I know different providers will have different things that they recommend for moms to do, different relaxation techniques, or even like things to drink or whatever. But just know that it is emotionally exhausting, but every contraction really is doing something. And oftentimes what we see with women that have prodromal labor is once things kick in and it's like, okay, now we're for sure moving into active labor, that they end up having a shorter labor from the active stage to the end than somebody who did not have prodromal labor. So just know that every contraction is doing something, whether it's opening the cervix or something happening inside that you can't see. There is a lot happening for your baby to be born. And so every contraction is good for your baby, good for your body, even though it can be exhausting. And so that's the like mental part of just reminding yourself that you're not going to be in labor forever. This baby will be born soon and you are strong enough to complete the task. But just know it's the emotional part that will really, really get you. But other than that, if you are having contractions and it is go time, and that can be a sign, they typically will become longer, stronger, and closer together. It's really common for moms to feel them in that lower back area. And then we start hearing that they are wrapping around to the front. And that is the cue that things are getting moving a little bit. If you are a mom that has sporadic in the sense of like, they'll be 3 minutes apart, and then the next one will be 6, and the next one will be 5, and then it'll be 12. And if it's something like that, it really is likely a positional issue. And so that's when we say do all this stuff in the event that it could be a posterior baby. That's when you want to see side lying release, a little bit of spinning babies. Even the mile circuit can be really helpful with that. The forward leaning inversion, a little bit of rebozo work, pelvic tilts, all of the things that can help baby to be in a really good position for birth. And it's funny because if you do have a baby that's posterior and you are able to get them to turn, it is like key in a keyhole. And once they turn, it's like, whoop, okay, now we're going. So it just kind of like clicks in, and then contractions just keep moving pretty much at a faster rate most of the time. But it really gets going. So, and remember that birth is gentle. So oftentimes those contractions start and they come in a wave where it's like a gentle and it gets a little bit more intense and you're going up the mountain or the wave, and then it releases at the top, and it'll do that over and over. And those contractions that are like starting out, they're only like 30 seconds or sometimes even 15 seconds long, and they're this like gentle, and then they become a little bit longer and they're getting a little bit more intense. And they get shorter. So it's like now they're lasting 45 seconds and they're coming every 5 minutes, and then it just keeps going. So that's what you're looking for, is kind of that progression where it's like they're becoming more intense. They're taking me a little bit longer to get through, and I'm having a lot more of them more often than I was before. That's really common. And so if you are somebody that is wanting to labor at home for some time, we always say use the 311. If it is a second, third, fourth, fifth baby, and you want to be a little more careful about when you get to your birthplace, maybe you do the 411, but that would look like contractions that are 3 minutes apart, lasting for at least a minute. And you're doing that for at least an hour. So they're 3 minutes apart, lasting a minute long for at least an hour. That would be a good time to go into your birthplace. As I said, if you've had babies before, you're worried about getting to your birthplace, then and maybe you want to use the 411. So contractions, you want to do it when they're 4 minutes apart. You're going to head in 1 minute long, at least an hour, and you would head into your birthplace. But it's really up to you. You guys get to decide when you head in, wherever you head in. But just know that yes, if contractions are there and they're continuing and nothing is slowing them down, and the way to see if it is like, this is definitely labor, is if nothing changes it. So if you're like getting a bunch of contractions and you're sitting down, well, change what you're doing. Go stand up and walk around. Are they becoming closer together when you do that? Are they spacing out? Are they becoming sporadic? Well, then it's probably not labor time yet. Same with like if you're walking around or vacuuming or whatever and you're having all these contractions. Well, when you lay down or sit down and stop moving, are those things continuing? Well, then it's probably go time. We also say try eating, maybe take a shower, take a walk, just see what is happening and you'll be able to judge it from there. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can expect as you are coming up to your labor time. It's just like when you're trying to figure out if you're pregnant or not, you go online and you like search all the things. You're like breast tenderness and I haven't skipped my period yet, but I think I am feeling nauseous. And you just start going through the list. You're like, am I pregnant or am I not? Am I imagining this? Am I not? And some of that will hold true for trying to figure out if you're in labor. But I promise once things are moving, there will be a point where you're like, I am in labor. There is no turning back. I can't believe I was curious about whatever. But it is so exciting in the beginning, trying to figure out, wait, was that a contraction? Are we going into labor? How do I feel? All of that kind of stuff. But anyways, those are your early signs of labor, and I will see you here next week.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.